Welcome to the AppDev Done Right Summit session featuring Rafay. We'll explore how modern platforms teams are accelerating Kubernetes operations without sacrificing governance, security, or developer velocity. As organizations scale in their application portfolios, they face growing pressures to standardize environments, streamline day two operations, and enable self-service for developers, all while keeping complexity in check. Rafay's Kubernetes operation platform is a purpose-built environment to help address these challenges, offering automation, visibility, control across multi-clusters and multi-cloud environments. In this session, we'll help dive right into Rafay's a value proposition that we just talked about, how it helps organizations deliver cloud-native applications faster, safer, and at enterprise scale. I'm joined today by Haseeb. Haseeb, welcome.
All good to see you. Thank you for having me on.
Of course, I probably didn't do that any justice, but I'll let you kind of give some background of what I just said about Rafay and how it all comes together.
Yeah, happy to do it. So as Paul knows, and we have spent enough time talking about this. So Rafay is, taking a step back from Kubernetes, fundamentally an orchestration company. We help both enterprises and service providers simplify the consumption of compute that they're managing. So the compute for an enterprise could be in a public cloud, it could be on-prem. For a service provider, it usually happens to be their own compute in a data center somewhere. The big driver for us at present is companies who are purchasing GPU-based hardware, accelerated computing hardware, which is very expensive. And what they're looking for is a way to enable consumption of that compute as quickly as possible, to it at a high percentage as possible. And we make that happen in spades. As part of the platform, we deliver three things that I believe are critical for any organization to behave as a cloud. The number one, we solve for self-service consumption. So a developer from any one of your customers' environment should be able to go to a portal, press a button, get compute. If you can't do that, by the way, you're not a cloud. You're a data center, not a cloud. Second, we enable application consumption. So if your customers, internal or external, are looking for model as a service, okay, if you can't do that, by the way, you're not a cloud. Data center, great business, not a cloud. And the third thing is you should be able to behave in a truly multi-tenant fashion. And when I say multi-tenant, I don't mean I sell 4 servers at a time. No. If somebody wants a single GPU, or if somebody wants to consume tokens to try out DeepSeek, you should be able to manage all of this user consumption and the same infrastructure, same server, in some cases, same GPU, depends on the situation. If you can't deliver true multi-tenancy at the network level, at the compute level, at the application level, you're not a cloud. We enable these 3 things for the customer. And that's why we seem to be doing really well as a company, as Paul knows.
Yeah, Haseeb, this is really exciting times, honestly. As you kind of mentioned, those 3 areas you just highlighted are really key to the success of a modern organization, trying to drive towards their success. As you know, we've talked about a number of times, I cover the AppDev's practice here at the CUBE Research. And when I look at the practice, I focus on day 0, day 1, day 2, and DevSecOps, in the CI/CD pipeline and everything that touches it across the SDLC. But when we look at these modernization efforts, I also talk about it in the context of past, present, and future. And the 3 elements you just mentioned are really tied to that moving from a heritage environment to a more modernized approach. So I want to start by kind of expressing some research here that we've just recently fielded and has come back from the field. We found that 69% of enterprises that report that managing Kubernetes infrastructure, the complexity around it slows down application delivery. That's one of the things that we see as a challenge, but we also see, according to a number of sources, including a CNCF, as well as our research, we found that Kubernetes in production rose 96% in 2024, but only 34% of organizations feel confident to manage it at scale. So Haseeb, when we look at the biggest challenges here, out of those 3 things you mentioned, out of those 3 areas of focus, I do want to talk a little bit about the biggest challenges platform teams face when managing Kubernetes at scale. And how does Rafay address these challenges?
Yeah, look, Kubernetes or any of these cloud capabilities, even if you're just providing VM as a service, surprisingly, or pipeline as a service, many of our customers end up doing that. The problem, Paul, you and I talked about this before, is that when you have very little scale, a couple of developers, maybe one team, it's all actually pretty easy, right? The question is not that one team. The question is, okay, you're an enterprise with many BUs, each BU has many teams, each team has many developers, and all of them are working on different things, and sometimes they're working on shared infrastructure. Now, how do you govern this environment? And that's the problem, right? So when you think about that kind of a setup where things are so dynamic, what is your standardization strategy? What is your governance strategy? What's your configuration management strategy, right? These are simple questions, but they become massive tasks, right? And what happens in platform engineering, for right or wrong, this is how people do this. They sort of solve a problem at a time. There's no essentially a roadmap. When you build a product, you have a 2-year you have a roadmap. I'm going to do this today. but I need to deliver that thing. So I'm going to plan accordingly. Unfortunately, in platform engineering, we are all very reactive. So we work on that one guy who needs to solve that one problem. I need to connect GitLab to this one environment, and I guess we're done. Okay, but then tomorrow somebody's got GitHub or somebody else saw Circle CI. Oh, by the way, this person is using VPCs in this way, but they use it another way, and then the IAM roles are different here and there. What's your strategy? And if you don't think about strategy on day one, what happens is you have a mishmash. And we have a mishmash, consistently what happens is the subsequent problem you solve, it's going to take longer and longer for you to solve, because you have to go back and solve for everything else that you already created, right? All this, debt that you've created in your company is why you slow down. It's all great at the beginning. 6 months later, everybody hates it. And this is consistent. This is how it is, right? And then the first team leaves the company, and the next one comes and says, everything they built in the past was wrong. I'm going to do it all over again. Let's not do this anymore. This is not okay. Let's focus on our core principles, right? Like, what is the right way to do it? No.
Yeah, absolutely, Haseeb. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, when we think about it, you mentioned that the governance and control. I want to talk a little bit about that, right? What we find is, research is showing that by 2026, that 75% of organizations are adopting in IDP to help improve developer experience and speed, right? So that kind of helps with the kind of deployment models, right? But then we also find in our research that enterprises are enabling self-service with guardrails to increase, about 2.5% boost in developer velocity. But the problem is this governance and control has to be put into play, right? And if you don't have governance and control, that's an area of challenge. I mean, we've talked about this before, where you're talking to CIOs and such, and their number one challenge that they run into is application modernization at scale, and they have to work with the entire organization in order to drive those results, right? So when we look at this, how do you recommend, or how would you, talk to your prospects, your customers, about self-service capabilities for developers without compromising those governance and controls?
Yeah. So I think this growth of IDPs is also indicative of our reactive nature as a group, right? So people decided, I know what to do. If I just have a portal where people can press a button, I'm going to solve my problems. Okay. All right. So now they're portals. Okay, but what happens behind the portal? Have you thought about that? Because really the thing is not the front, the thing is at the back, right? So, but it goes back to the same thing. Most of these IDP platforms, end of the day, end up calling word Terraform, right? So now Terraform, who wrote it? How many different variations of this do you have? And that becomes a problem. I think that, like, fundamentally, this is what I think about a lot. And when I talk to CIOs, I encourage them to consider that on the product side of the house, they run roadmaps different from the platform engineering side of the house. And the question is, why? They're both products, right? Why do you behave differently when it's platform engineering versus actual products that you sell as a company? It's actually the same thing. Your platform engineering output should be treated the same way you treat the product for your company, because this is the foundation of your business, but you don't behave that way. How many platform engineering teams have product managers? Very few.
Yeah.
Why? Why not? You're building a product. Why don't you have a product manager? They don't think like that, right? And I think, like, it would be awesome to encourage all of our peers in this industry to think like that. There should be a product manager. You have many of them for the product, This is also a product, but because they don't have product managers, they think in terms of, again, today's problem, tomorrow's problem, the day after, right? What's your long-term strategy? IDPs are great. Look, again, they're awesome. You should, whatever you want to use, you should use it. They're all great. What happens behind the IDP? And that's where the governance piece comes in. We chose to solve a hard problem, a problem that most companies actually don't want to solve, right? So my thesis on Stratus, by the way, is if you solve this hard problems that fundamentally boring, non-sexy problems that nobody wants to solve, look, end of the day, you make that, right? So we're doing that. So we're doing this for everybody. And what I tell my customers, like, the way you need to solve this problem is sort of the same as all these other companies already working with me. So the question you have to ask yourself is, do you have a competitive advantage in building this? Or do you have a competitive advantage in buying this? Actually, the answer is usually buy. Cheaper, faster, just go. Take your people, work on actually things that create value for the company. This is not going to create any value for you. I'm the commodity provider, buy the commodity. And let's go from here. And this seems to work consistently now.
Absolutely. And time to value is critical, right? I mean, if you can't focus. I think when I talk about the do-it-yourself kind of rollout versus, buying something, the devils are in the details, right? Especially when you start looking at, the complexity of a lot of these environments, right? When we look at things like monitoring and compliance across multi-clusters and multi-cloud worlds, we see in our research that 94% of organizations are using 2 or more clouds, 65% are using 4 or more clouds, right? So there's a lot of clouds out there that are being managed. And it's the complexity around this of knowing what's happening across these different environments. You have to be able to address the challenges, but you also have to have a fast time to value solution in order to do this, right? And, when we see 78% of organizations operating multi-cloud and clusters, multi-clusters and multiple clouds, creating day 2 challenges for inconsistencies or consistencies around observability and lifecycle management, that's a big challenge as well, right? And so when you start looking at all of these pieces, there's operational overhead that comes into play. There's just the ways teams are working together. So, I think when I look at Rafay's kind of a way of doing this, you simplify, from what I understand, one, it's not just the rapid time to value, which is absolutely the case. You have that, right? But it's also the simplifying that day 2 operations, like those upgrades and the monitoring and the compliance. We talked about compliance, but all those other pieces for day 2, that's a big factor here. What are your thoughts around that?
So 100%. Like, the good news is we have customers on our platform who are single cloud users. So the question always is, look, if I have a single cloud, do you deliver any value? And the value is in the governance, because even in a single cloud, you have multiple teams doing multiple things. How do you make sure they all sort of look the same, feel the same? Otherwise, when things break, you don't know what to do next, right? Then it becomes a fishing expedition to figure out exactly what broke. But you are right? So many companies are running multiple clouds, and the burden of managing the multi-cloud strategy falls on the same platform engineering organization, right? And then they have a challenge. Okay, so between Azure and GCP and AWS, for example, how am I going to create standards? And the example I always use for this, and I use this again and again, is simple things. You have Prometheus. Everybody's using Prometheus and Kubernetes, and you are running multiple clusters in multiple clouds. How do you upgrade Prometheus if there's a CVE? What's your process? Let's have a conversation. How do you do it, right? And if you are able to tell me a very quick and easy solution where you can do this in, let's not be too aggressive, 1 day. Okay, great. You are the master. But if you're telling me that's going to take me 6 weeks to roll this out across, 4 regions and 80, 90, 100 clusters, which is not a lot. Okay, you're on the right track, but you haven't really understood the purpose of governance and standardization. Standardization begets the ability for you to move fast. When you have standards, you can go super fast because everything is going to work. You won't have any outliers, and we don't have outliers. You can go very fast, but at the same time, in a fleet as big as that, you still have to think about, what people call fleet management. How do you do this in stages? You and I have talked about sort of the stage management of infrastructure upgrades in the past. these are the places where our customers sort of, by the time they get it right, they're on version 3 or version 4 of the platform engineering implementation. And the question is, okay, you've been doing this for 5 years. How much money did you spend already? 15, 20, $30 million have been spent on various time, salaries, etc. Oh my God. Like, look, our product's reasonably expensive. It's not that expensive. Right?
Right.
It's a pretty good deal. Let's just solve these problems. Let's focus on something that actually matters to the company, which is let's go build actual value in your applications. So your customers are paying you more money. Right. And yeah, look, it's amazing, right? So look, 5, 6 years ago when I used to tell the story, when we were early in this market, we had frankly no product at the time, it was a hard sell because we were in very much of a DIY industry. But I think over the last couple of years, when people had actually started going to production, back then people were just tinkering. Now people are in real applications are running production. I think people see it, right? It's like, well, I want to find the fastest, easiest, most reliable way to go to production and not have churn happen in my application. If somebody can show me that, I'm all for it.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, actually, it's not just you saying this. I mean, I was talking to your customers, right? And your customers were actually saying that they've reported reducing application environment setup time from weeks to minutes. And that they're doing this through using Rafay's workflow automation and GitOps driven deployment, right? That's a way to kind of help with that focus. What we're also seeing in our own research is high performing team release code faster, 4 times faster when they place platform automation that's in place. So again, automation is a big factor here. Regardless, a lot of times organizations will say, well, yeah, I really would love to do automation, but my organization is not mature enough to do that right now. And automation doesn't mean you're taking completely a human out of the loop. I mean, there's still a human in the loop. But I think when we talk about this, it is about that reducing that time to market, right? And reducing that, the churn and everything you were just kind of referring to. So when we look at automation, how does it support both the platform and engineering teams and application teams to reduce the automation and the time to market?
So here's something that we think about a lot here, right? So we always ask this question: who's your customer? And we've trained our sellers to do this. Who's your customer? And it's an interesting question because sometimes people are surprised by that question, actually. So platform engineering, who's your customer? It's developers, it's ops people, security people, right? Okay, so then you have to deliver experiences for all of them. What's your plan, right? So mostly these people are thinking about developers. I get it, right? They're thinking about some level of ops. Usually they're not thinking about security. But I'll tell you what's interesting is that what they're thinking about first is not so much what their customers need, but what can they deliver, which is the wrong way to build any product. You don't deliver what you can do. You first figure out what your customers need, right? So your developers, as an example, simple example, I wrote Java code, I wrote some code. My application has a React front end, and I use MySQL as my database. That's my work. And many banks, by the way, look like that. Many, many banks. Okay. I wrote code. I just want to test it. What do I do next? Oh my God. This is a process now, by the way. Most banks, big well-known banks, the top 50, this is the process now. But as one example, what we've done with the customers who are on a platform already, a developer, all they have to do is in a portal, they say, here's my code in this good repo. And that's it. Nothing else. Not absolutely nothing else. Everything else should be matching. So that's perfection. How do you deliver it? See, automation sometimes is a burden if you don't understand what are you doing it for. So I'm doing it so that my developer can write code and test it 50 times a day. Not every 2 weeks because he has to file a ticket. 50 times a day, 100 times a day. If you can do that, your people will move so fast that your company will actually benefit from the value. Then automation is not a means unto itself. It's benefiting the company's top line. And similarly for ops, I'll give another example. I have developers coming to me as an ops guy saying, I just need a landing zone in Amazon or whatever, Azure or whatever. How do you do that? This is a project in companies, by the way. They have 21-day moratoriums on landing zones before they actually let people use them because they don't know exactly what they've done. They have automation, but no standards. Standardization is key. Automation without standardization and governance is useless. It's just a script. Nobody cares. Nobody should be using this. There has to be measurable, testable, governance and standardization in place. When you do that, your ops teams move super fast, your developers move super fast. And to me, by the way, those are the two customers that matter for platform engineering. Who's your customer?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And and I want to double click a little bit on that because organization standards and security, securing the environment is really key to the success of a successful deployment. What we're seeing in our research is we're seeing 92% of containers have at least one misconfiguration, and this is inconsistent security postures across clusters. It was cited as a top risk. Right, this is a challenge that we see often, right? And we also see that like enabling policy as code helps with centralizing governance. It also helps with reducing the enterprise's configuration drift by 60%. And that's a big factor as well. So maybe if you can touch a little bit as we kind of come to a close, we can touch a little bit why organizational standards and secure environments, it's maybe Kubernetes environments, maybe just multi-cloud environments, but overall, why is this important? And you've already started going down that path because it's repeatability and automation. But I think that that's something that we want to double click down on here to make sure the audience fully understands standardization is a key to success.
Yep. So to me, security is the way I think about security is the following, right? So there are certain solutions needed from a security perspective that have to do with sort of external attacks, right? And then there's sort of stupid stuff. There's actual attacks, right? Real threats, and they're just stupid stuff, right? So we as organizations spend money on both though, and we see them both as security problems. I see the second one, which is the misconfiguration, right? The policy as code stuff, right? This should be business as usual from an operation perspective, right? So if you have the right standards, if you have the right governance in place, you don't have these issues. You're not going to have a pod being able to access the host and doing silly things. It's just not going to happen if you have the right, posture in place, if you have the right controls in place, right? And when we start with a customer, the first thing we do before we have them implement anything is we agree on what are your standards in your company. And if you don't have one, it's okay. We've done this enough times now. I can actually show you what others, without naming, this is what others are doing. This is the standard now. We know now. This, if you follow these things, they're in pretty good shape and the security team's going to be happy. Let's focus on the external threats, not the stupid stuff, right? And this is, by the way, this is really important. If you have, and it all goes back to the same thing, standardization and governance. If you have the right standardization, the right governance in place, none of these things are going to happen. Your people can actually run free, right? Literally, if you have the right guardrails in place, they can go as fast as possible. People who say things like we're not ready for automation, they're actually more concerned about if they go too fast, what will happen that we don't know? So let's not let them run fast. That's not why you get a salary, my friend. You get a salary to help them go fast. Go figure your stuff out, right? And this is the thing, right? If you treat platform engineering as a product organization, these problems will go away. I'm telling you, you and I got to write a paper on this. Platform engineering as a product org. Problems go away.
All right, so you heard it first here. We will have a paper written on why platform engineering should be a product organization. See, this is great. I mean, this is really a lot to talk about, a lot to take in. What would you like to leave the audience here as they're just getting started and understanding, where they should go? How should they get started with this?
Yeah, look, I mean, short of pitching our platform, which is by the way really good, you should give it a shot. It's very nice. I think this notion of starting with some standards, starting with some best practices that others have adopted, right? So one of the things we've done in the company is we've set up a team. Their job is to basically show customers what that means, right? So hey, no expectations, no string attached. We're happy to work with you, show you what is possible. And then if you like it, it's great. We'd love to work with you. Obviously, don't make money. My job is to help the company make money. But the first thing that I really think about a lot is if we can change the way people think about platform engineering in our industry, a lot of these problems will go away, right? And yeah, what Paul and I just said, we're going to do this, man. We're going to write a paper, platform engineering as a product organization. We do this in our industry, a lot of these problems go away. I'm hoping we can solve that problem together.
Love it. Love it. Haseeb, thank you for your time today. This has been awesome. And thank you for joining us with this session with Rafay. and at the AppDev Done Right Summit. By embracing these practices, organizations can really respond faster to these challenges and build resilient, ongoing, innovative culture, that's what we're trying to get to, right? We've been talking about it throughout the entire summit is, innovation, allowing developers to innovate. As we move forward, remember the key to operational excellence lies in the continuous learning and adaptation, and keeping your applications reliable, performant, and ready whatever that comes next for them. So keep building, stay curious, and keep going. Thank you for attending our session today.